right, greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Wednesday night live stream for Week 12 of the 2024 fantasy football season. That's right. I don't even know what day it is. I've been doing this for 12 weeks straight, and we're carrying on. We're as happy as ever because, of course, we're very much so close to approaching a hopefully upcoming matchup here on Thursday Night Football, which will not disappoint. But knowing Thursday Night Football, it most likely is going to disappoint. Either way, we're talking all things fantasy football going into Week 12. If you guys have any questions, again, over the course of the next hour of the live stream, I'm answering any and all questions. So whether you type it in the live chat or send it in via Super Chat, make sure you include your scoring format, half PPR, full PPR, standard. The more context you provide, the easier it'll be for me to answer said questions. Nom Nom has sent in the first super of the day. Nom Nom, I haven't seen your question typed in the chat. It said, my question's in the chat. I haven't seen it. If you're here and you can hear me, please do me a favor, type it in the chat so that we can get to it immediately. Outside of that, Onage, welcome back. Onage is always the first person to type, and he said earlier that after 2 back-to-back days without power, he's still watching the live stream. Onage, you're one of the best, man. Let me tell you. Rogo, what's up? All right, so anyway, answering any and all questions, so let's get into it, shall we? Obviously, as you guys can tell, the thumbnail of today's episode, Bucky Irving. Listen, and then you have, Mike Evans here earlier today in terms of the wide receiver episode. I'm thinking pretty highly of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, okay? I'm thinking pretty highly of them this week, especially when they take on Tommy DeVito and the Giants. Anyway, we'll figure it out as we continue on. All right, so first question of the day, outside of Nom Nom, which we're waiting for still, we move on to Trey, who sends in a question. Trey says, in a full PPR, 6-point per passing touchdown format, Bo Nix or Justin Herbert. Okay, between the two of them, I think, so there's multiple ways you can approach this. The way that I prefer to would be going and playing Bo Nix this week because they played the Raiders. It is just too easy of a matchup to pass up on. As for your next question, Otten or Hawkinson, between the two of them, I'd rather play Cade Otten. Thank you. Moving on to the next question, and I need an RB2, a wide receiver 2, and a flex out of Tyrone Tracy, Jonathan Taylor, DJ Moore, Jawan Jennings, and McConkey. Yeah, listen, if I was going to play an RB2 there, it would be JT. As for your wide receiver 2, I'm playing Jawan Jennings. As for your flex and a full PPR, I'm playing McConkey there. And it also says drop Aubrey for Seibert or Jake Bates this week. Yes, I would drop him for either of the two. The one that I would prefer for rest of season as of this current moment in time is Bates because I know that he's healthy in comparison to Seibert, who's also still dealing with a little bit of an injury. If you can't get Bates, then Seibert's a great alternative option instead of playing Aubrey going forward. Thank you, Trey. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Eric sends in a question. Eric says, hi, Andrew. In a full PPR, but 1 point per 10 receiving yards and 5 points and 1 point per 5 rushing yards, flex Warren or Njoku. Okay, interesting. So let's say we're in a situation, Jalen, Warren, rushing yards. Let's see here. So under the assumption that Jalen Warren does what he has done in the last 4 games, okay, and he runs for 40 yards because he has done that in each of the last 4 games, you would theoretically get 8 points out of that alone. I would be very comfortable. Is it a full PPR format? It is a full PPR. Okay, so theoretically, in these scenarios, like 8, 10, and then potentially it's like a 12. Okay, so as of right now, in a full PPR, if I was in your position, I probably still play David Njoku unless the weather tomorrow is a disaster. If it's a 100% rain game and like 10 minutes before kickoff, Eric, we can get a designation that is the case based on what we see either on the Amazon live stream for Thursday Night Football or different Twitter accounts of people sending in pictures or streams, all that kind of jazz. If we can get a confirmation that it's a rain game, then at that point we're going to have to play Warren because he's far too valuable in this specific format to play or to sit instead of Njoku. But again, if there's no rain, we would play Njoku there. So very much so dependent on what the weather looks like tomorrow. I'm going to assume it's going to rain, so expect to play Warren. Also, Chicago or Arizona's defense this week. I'd much rather play Arizona's defense if I had to pick one of the two. Thank you. All right, moving on to a question that comes in from Ben Pierce. Ben Pierce says, in a full PPR, flex, I'm currently 8-3. Should I trade Terry McLaurin for Marvin Harrison? I've got Kyler. Wide receiver depth consists of JJ, Terry, London, Wilson, Jennings, and Devontae Smith. In this current position, I don't think I'm trading Terry McLaurin. I prefer to have Terry McLaurin in the long run rest of season in comparison to Marvin Harrison Jr., especially considering the lack of overall opportunity share Marvin receives I think Terry McLaurin, based on what he has accomplished thus far this season within the offense, it's just an automatic to keep him on roster going forward. Thank you. All right, let's see here. We had a question from RJ who says, PPR, which two should I start? Devontae, Walker, Ladd. Happy birthday, King. Thank you very much for the happy birthday wishes. RJ, I am suggesting you play Ladd McConkey and Kenneth Walker this weekend. Thank you. We had a question from Baba Booey who says, start Warren or Dobbs? In a full PPR, I'd rather start, I think it's very much so dependent. I think Warren is just a safe 10 points, while on the opposite end, of course, Dobbs has a lot of competition. This most recent performance for the Green Bay Packers, obviously, there wasn't very much target opportunity within the overall attack, mainly because they were consistently running the ball for majority of that game. Jordan Love only had 17 passing attempts, right? So at very best, the most targets a singular player had on the offense was 4. So if we're going to be in a situation where going into this week against San Francisco, significantly more competitive matchup, specifically forcing them to pass, I think it's just going to be purely a matter of weather. So if I look at the NFL weather report for the upcoming game in Green Bay, let's see here. It says it's going to be a chance of rain showers. For now, again, if tomorrow is going to be a situation where we're 100% going to be a rain game, I'd rather just play Jaylen Warren in that circumstance rather than play a wide receiver in a rain game, alternatively. So I probably lean towards playing Warren in that circumstance. Thank you. All right, let's see if Nom Nom had sent in the question. Nom Nom has yet to type in the chat. So Nom, if you can do me a favor somehow, some way, type if you are still there. Let's see. Nom Nom. Never mind, I see it. I was just spelling the name wrong. I thought it was Nom Nom with a space in between. Now I see the question. Nom Nom says, in a PPR, we have Nix, Carr, Christian McCaffrey, Mixon, Achane, Benson, T-Mac. We have Evans. We have London, Mooney, Ikine, Otten, Knox, Moody, McLaughlin, and Vikings. Okay, so what's the follow-up to that? I think that is the question. So it says, should I trade for Chase? Okay. So in this scenario, are we trading for Chase? Yes, absolutely. If I was in your position, Nom Nom, and you had a winning record and you do not need to capture a victory this week, and giving away a player like Evans or London would be able to acquire you, let's say, for example, you had to move Evans and another piece in order to acquire Jamar Chase, I'd absolutely do it. As long as you're keeping Achane, Mixon, and Christian McCaffrey, I do so. Now, if somebody's like, hey, I'll give you Chase for Achane, that's fine too. I'm okay with making that eligible of a trade, because for the remainder of the season, specifically looking towards the fantasy playoffs, I think it would be very beneficial for your team in a full PPR format. But if someone's going to ask for like Evans and an Achane, then there's just no conversation to be had there. You'd only be sending them a player due to their desperation. And quite frankly, if I was going to make this trade, I'd be sending away Evans in order to accomplish it. Nom nom. Thank you. Alrighty, I appreciate that. Crispy sends in a question. Crispy, nothing typed within the message. Let's see, Crispy, anything in the chat? Crispy, there's nothing in the live chat from you. So you're going to have to either retype. Yeah, you're going to have to retype in the live chat. Thank you. I'm Gucci Upolo says, PPR Ridley or Aaron Jones in the flex? Really good question. I think in a full PPR format, man, that matchup against Chicago is really advantageous. I think both of them have really compelling matchups. As of right now, I think legitimately the highest upside between the two is Ridley. Easy E sends in a question, says, hi, Andrew. Thanks for the help. Questions in the chat. All right, Easy. Let me see if I can find it. Easy says, I'm trying to prepare for my playoffs, weeks 15 and 16. Hurts plays the Steelers in week 15. Should I stream a quarterback that week? Purdy versus Detroit, Stafford, Herbert versus Tampa available. I mean, I would okay, so this is my objective statement. Going into that week, I'm going to rank Herbert as a top 3. I'm going to rank Jalen Hurts as a top 3 quarterback. There is no situation in which I have Jalen Hurts on roster and I'm not starting him. Because of his rushing upside and the potential of him scoring 3 rushing touchdowns in any singular game, what he specifically has in terms of his baseline of production and then additionally his upside is significantly more valuable than any other quarterback that you could possibly find outside of a Lamar Jackson or potentially a Josh Allen in that circumstance. So really, I don't think you need to waste your positions on roster to go roster somebody else to potentially play them. If I'm getting into the playoffs with Jalen Hurts, I'm starting Jalen Hurts. I'm not pivoting off of him because he plays Pittsburgh. That's my initial thought, and that's the way that I would approach it. Easy E, thank you. All right, let's see here. Coolest nerd ever sends in a question. Let's see where the question is, though. Control F, coolest. Nothing attached to it and no question in the live chat. Do me a favor, type when you get an opportunity. Next, let me see if Crispy had typed in anything. Crispy? Nothing from Crispy. Okay, very well. We'll just slowly catch up. Fox sends in a question. Says, howdy, Andrew. Questions in the chat. All right, Fox. Let's hope that you've typed in the chat. Fox, there's nothing in the chat. I mean, you guys are trolling me at this point. All right, anyway. Let's see here. Yo, start one in the flex full PPR. Waddle, Javonte, or Pop Douglas. Out of those three options, I'd probably end up playing Pop Douglas there. Lakshay. Diego says QJ or Disley this week. And Russ or May. I'd rather play Drake May and I'd rather play Quentin Johnston. Personally. That's the way that I'd go about it. Football says full PPR flex. Jameson, Williams, Njoku, or Judy. Depends on tomorrow's weather. If tomorrow's weather is a disaster, you have to play Jameson. If it's not, then you play Njoku out of the group. What's up, Bearcat? Says Reed didn't seem confident about Pacheco in the report today. Yeah, I mean, he was limited, which was very surprising to me. The fact that Pacheco, beginning on a Wednesday, is limited in his overall participation. For those of you who have Kareem Hunt, this could be a saving grace within the upcoming performance. You could potentially have a situation here by the time they get to Friday, considering there are no rush to have to bring him back. We could see a week in which Kareem Hunt for another consecutive game, specifically against Carolina, one of the best matchups, could be available in starting as a flex for us. So, yeah, I did see that, Bearcat, for sure. Ricky Silva in the chat says, Kincaid or Taysom Hill rest of season? Considering I don't know Kincaid's injury status, I just picked Taysom Hill as of right now. All right, let's see. Let me zoom out here. Okay, so let's try this one at a time. Crispy, did you send in anything? Nothing from Crispy. Okay, your name is going to go on a list, and I'm going to subsequently try to remember that you sent in a question. If I don't get to it, it's on you. Then coolest nerd ever. Let's see if you typed in anything cool. Coolest nerd ever says in a half PPR, Jaden Daniels or Bo Nix. As of right now, considering the injury concern and the lack of production that we have seen from Jaden Daniels, I'm probably going to play Bo Nix in this circumstance. As for your next question, Scary Terry or Zay Flowers, as of this today, earlier today, we dropped our top 36 wide receiver rankings. I'd prefer to play Terry McLaurin there over Zay Flowers, considering his inconsistency, but I could justify as to why I would play Zay over the other. But right now, I'm going to place Terry. And then your next question, flex Bucky or the others. Yeah, no, I'd rather just play. Yeah, so as of right now, coolest nerd, I'm playing Bo Nix, Scary Terry, and Bucky Irving out of those available options that you have. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Did Fox send in a question in the live chat? Fox says, hey, Andrew, in a full PPR, play two. Pickens, Terry, Tracy, then Otten or Disley. Thanks. Okay, so if I'm playing two of those wide receivers / running backs, in a full PPR scoring format, as it currently stands, I will play both wide receivers. In the event in which tomorrow afternoon, about 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, if the weather in Cleveland is a disaster, I am not playing Pickens. I would just wait, and I'd play Tracy alongside of Terry. Very much so dependent on the weather. Now, as for your next question, Otten or Disley, I'm going to play Otten this week. Thank you. Moving on, we had a question that came in from Cameron Kaplan. Thank you, Cameron. Cameron says PPR, Chubb, Warren, Dowdle, or pick up Benson / Justice Hill. So yeah, out of those available options that you have mentioned, I'd prefer to play Warren out of the group in a full PPR scoring format. In a half PPR, I'd probably go to Chubb in this scenario. But as of right now, Warren is probably the play out of the bunch. Thank you. All right, then we move on to a question that comes in from Hector Hernandez. Hector says, hey, Andrew, I'm in a 10-team half PPR league. I traded Nico Collins for Brian Robinson and Nick Chubb, having Puka, Hunt, Tillman, Elijah Moore, Shakir on the bench. Bench is Akers, Benson, Brooks. Was it a terrible trade? You traded Nico Collins for Brian Robinson and Nick Chubb. I don't think it's a great trade at all. At all. You gave up a... There are very few wide receivers that can live up to the potential caliber that Nico Collins is at this current moment in time. So not only did you not get a wide receiver in return, which again, for the future of your season, you will need, because again, in a half PPR, Shakir is not as great as he could potentially be or we'd like him to be. So losing Nico Collins hurts badly. And not only that, you traded for running backs that first and foremost, Nick Chubb cannot start. And Brian Robinson is a solid player, don't get me wrong, but he's not even close to the overall caliber of what Nico Collins can present within a given week for your roster. And Brian Robinson has an upcoming bye week. So if you haven't already made the playoffs, you're in a really tough situation there. I don't love the trade, but I hope for the best, and I hope that you're still able to win in the upcoming weeks despite said trade. Miles sends in a question, says, what's up? Trade Hopkins for Odunze. I don't mind it. Do I expect Odunze to outproduce Hopkins on a consistent basis? The upcoming schedule is, it's entirely just in favor of Odunze in comparison to what Hopkins has to face. So under the assumption that Caleb Williams is going to continue to heavily target him, I don't mind it at all. Moving on, we had a question that comes in from Inyo Cheeks, who says, 2 flex full PPR. Team/questions in the chat. Okay, so we have a 2 flex league here. The interesting thing is, Cheeks, you didn't type in the live chat, so there's nothing there, so I'll wait. All right, Chico410 sends in a question, says, if it rains tomorrow, should I pivot from Njoku to Jonnu? Most likely. I mean, look, here's the thing. A light drizzle is not going to affect the game. The Cleveland Browns will still throw the ball 40 times. What I'm talking about is the kind of rain in which it will literally take the ball after it comes out of Jameis's hands and pivot it in the wrong direction. I'm talking about 16 to 20 mile per hour winds and heavy downpour. That's what I'm specifically trying to explain to you guys. If it's a scenario where it's just a light drizzle, nobody cares. We are throwing the ball 40 to 50 times tomorrow. The Cleveland Browns will air it out. But in the event in which it is a torrential downpour and a disaster, sideways wind, where it is blasting them and, Jameis can barely see even though he has LASIK done, that's the kind of situation in which I'm replacing. Otherwise, no, I would just leave Njoku in there in a light drizzle kind of scenario. Crispy says, no question, just a donation, brother. Thank you, Crispy. I appreciate that. All right, so where is Cheeks? Cheeks, where are you at? All right, let's see here. Patrick in the chat says, in a full PPR, made a trade, Gibbs, Shakir, Rico for Bijan, Algier, and Ladd. Okay, understood. Yeah, 6-5 this week, must win. Opponent has Brees, Kamara on bye. I win the trade. Rest of team is Baker, Tracy, Cup. I mean, so you made a trade in which you were trading away Gibbs, Shakir, Rico for Bijan, Algier, and Ladd. Do I believe that is an objective win? I think it's a very equal trade in the long term. Honestly, long term, I probably prefer to have Shakir in a full PPR in comparison to Ladd, while I would also prefer to have Bijan over Gibbs. So again, ultimately, I think it's an equal trade across the board. As long as it helps you get a victory this week, that's all that matters. Thank you, Patrick. Doppio says, in a full PPR flex too, Bucky, Debo, Tracy, D-Hop, Judy. As of those available options, I mean, it's probably going to be like okay, Bucky has to play, so it's either Tracy or Debo in that circumstance, and the Debo circumstance will be 100% determined by his weather game. So for now, I'm going to say Bucky and Tracy are probably your starts until further notice, until we get a clearer picture of what the weather's going to look like in Green Bay on Sunday morning, or Sunday afternoon, I believe is the game. Let me confirm that. Yes, it is a afternoon game at 1:25 p.m. PST. All right, let's see here. Okay, there you go. It says, sold my soul. Okay, so this is from Cheeks. Sold my soul for this team and can only afford to lose one more game. But any final suggestions to take for the big push? Let's see here. So I don't see your team in the chat. I know you said like, hey, team's in the chat. You never typed anything in the chat in terms of team-wise. So you're going to have to redo that. Also, you said got Zamir White and Jalen Wright on the bench too. So yeah, I don't know what the context of that is. You're going to have to type out your full team because I don't see it in the live chat. Thank you, Cheeks. All right, let's see here. What do we have in the chat? Zach says Kareem Hunt or Bucky. In the event in which Kareem Hunt is active and there is no Pacheco, at that point, I'm willing to play Kareem Hunt this week. But only in that circumstance. Again, very much so dependent. By the time we get to Friday, we'll have a clearer picture on the matter, though. Maddie says, ditch him for a lotto ticket. Okay, so he's talking to somebody else. Andrew Castro in the chat says, Steelers or Detroit defense this week? As of right now, that's actually a really good one. I think for this week in specific, I'd probably rather have Pittsburgh's defense for this week. For rest of season, I'd rather have Detroit. Or at least for the next coming weeks here. But yeah, for this week, I don't mind playing Pittsburgh tomorrow, especially in that kind of a weather situation. Ando in the chat says Dallas Goedert, Hunter Henry, or Mark Andrews. As of right now, considering said matchups, out of those three available options, I'd probably go with In a half PPR, the order would most likely, it depends there. Mark Andrews is the tricky one because if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's just not as valuable as the other two. So it's probably safer just to roll with like Hunter Henry first, Dallas Goedert second, Mark Andrews third. Because, again, yeah, without a touchdown, we're screwed. Unknown Cayman says, who would you start? I need 2 wide receivers in a flex. I have Pickens, I have Ladd, I have Terry, I have Mike Evans, and I have Downs. As of right now, again, the rankings earlier today would kind of give you an indication as to which way I'm going. Mike Evans is a must start. I think Terry McLaurin is as well. So then it's pretty much just a matter between Pickens, Ladd, and Downs, which as of this moment, as long as the weather is not a problem tomorrow, I'm playing Pickens. Otherwise, you pivot to playing Ladd McConkey on Monday night against the Ravens. All right, let's see here. Brian Colorado sends in a question. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Brian says, Superflex. PPR, I'm 9-2. I have Jordan Love, Geno, Russ, Kyron, Jacobs, Montgomery, Rico, Chase, DK, Devontae Smith, Keon Coleman, Xavier Legette. Is trading Jacobs for Jonathan Taylor good? No, I'd rather have Jacobs the rest of the season. Also, is Jacobs, DK, Geno for JT and Pickens, or should I ask for Evans? As of right now, in a super flex format in which you have those available players, I am not making any trades. I do not like any of the players that you are getting in exchange. I prefer to have Jacobs over JT rest of the season. And I could arguably say the combo of DK and Geno is 10 times more valuable than just having Pickens, because having the ability to have an extra quarterback on roster that I could potentially pivot with in an upcoming matchup during the fantasy playoffs, considering you are 9-2, I'd much rather just have all those quarterbacks on roster. Keep DK, keep Jacobs. Don't make that trade. Reese sends in a question. Thank you, Reese. Says, hey, Andrew, in my second league, who should I start this week? I've got Bo Nix, 4 Burrow. Very well. PPR, 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, 3 flex. I know it's weird. No, it's okay. I've seen some very weird formats. That is not one of them. I'll tell you that objectively. I've seen thousands of different leagues. I've answered millions of questions. That is not a weird format at all. So in this overall circumstance, you have Henry, you have Kenneth Walker, you have Amon-Ra, Neighbors, Hill, Kupp, and Debo and Pickens. Okay, so you've got a lot of incredibly talented players that all have incredible upside. As for your starting running backs, again, you've only mentioned 2 running backs. So, I mean, really, Henry has to start between him and Kenneth Walker. So Henry is your RB1. Then when we move on to the wide receiver question, your wide receiver 1 is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Then when we move on to the flex question, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, and honestly, I do believe it's probably Neighbors. So that's the way I go about it. Henry, Amon-Ra, Kupp, Hill, Neighbors. That's the way that I'd go about it, Reese. Thank you. Headshop sends in a question. Says in a half PPR flex, Rachaad White, Tillman, Devontae Smith, or Otton. Out of those available, I know I'm playing Rachaad White out of all those available options. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Aiden in the chat says, should I trade DK for Kenneth Walker? I have Jacobs and Cook as my running backs. Waivers are thin, as Cook is on a bye, so I picked up Trey Benson, which is very thin. Debo's my wide receiver 2, and Reed is my flex. Yeah, I don't mind that trade at all. I think going forward, it's going to help you not only win this week, but of course, also help you for the remainder of the season because Kenneth Walker's already passed his bye. So in the long term, being able to fill in this week, help you potentially capture a victory and get you one step closer to the fantasy playoffs, absolutely. I have no issue with that at all. Matty P says, please, LOL, I'm dying. I know whether you think I should keep Ferguson on roster or not. No, you don't need Ferguson. Keep Ferg or pick up a ticket like Akers. Are we dropping Ferguson to pick up a ticket? I don't think Akers is a quote-unquote ticket because even if Akers had the full backfield range, I don't think he's a good enough running back to take advantage of it. I mean, just think about it this way. If Aaron Jones has been given the volume of opportunity he has, and he hasn't scored a touchdown since week 7, what do we think that Cam Akers is going to do? He's not a better running back. Right now, 5 weeks from now, he's not a better running back. So, honestly, if your current tight end on roster, Otton, if at any point is going to get injured, having the ability to pivot to Ferguson in a future week is perfectly fine. But if you think and you know that if you know that your waiver wire has enough depth at tight end to where they have a Disley, a Jonnu Smith sitting there that in a future week, if you're in a bind, you can pick it up, then yeah, you would pick up Akers. Otherwise, if there's nobody and it's a wasteland and the best available tight end on waivers is Fryer Muth, you don't drop that Ferguson play. Rogo sends in a question. Thank you, Rogo. Says, up, Andrew. Hope you're having a great week. It is. It's been a pretty solid week so far. Again, it's only Wednesday. Tomorrow, again, we'll determine my my mood. Very much so, considering, again, we're hoping that it's going to be a clear weather game and a shootout so that we can start off the week on fire. But hey, let's hope for the best. Either way. Nonetheless, we'll be here tomorrow night, streaming as soon as the game is over. Anyway, answering your question, says, wasn't able to snag Denver's defense on the waivers, but I did get Detroit. Okay, sounds good. Am I cooked or back to streaming or solid rest of the season? I mean, look, I think Detroit is a fantastic defensive play this week. And in terms of streaming rest of season, again, if you want to stream rest of season, it's very much so a viable option. The Lions have some upcoming games that are probably not going to be the most favorable, but considering how well the Lions have played as a team, I'm willing to start them against the Colts, the Bears, the Lions. Against the Bills, on December 15th, I'm not so confident about that one. But then the week after that against the Bears, I don't mind it. Like, as of right now, I can see myself playing the Lions defense in four of the next 5 weeks. There's a reason why somebody had asked earlier, would you rather have the Pittsburgh defense or Lions defense? I specifically said I'd like Pittsburgh this week, but for the remainder of the season, the Lions, considering how well they have played as a defense as a whole, I know that they just lost Alex Anzalone, but I still do believe that they have enough depth. They just brought in Zadarius Smith. Their pass rush will, of course, begin to pick up there. I think they're a strong enough defense to be able to ride them for the remainder of the year there. So, yeah, I just keep them. Rob sends in a question. Thank you, Rob. Rob says in a half PPR, trade Tyreek and Ladd McConkey for Breece Hall. I would have Saquon, JT Mixon, and Breece in my RB and 2 flex. Okay, so I don't understand why you would make the trade then. In that case, AJ Brown, Hopkins, BTJ as my wide receivers, Chubb, ETN on my bench. Yeah, no, I don't make the trade. I keep what you have. I have no interest in making that trade. If you were trading, let's say, for example, somebody said, hey, give me JT and Ladd, I'd be like, okay, I'd be willing to make that kind of a move. But considering you'd have to give away Tyreek Hill and Ladd McConkey, it doesn't make any sense at all. Considering you're already going to start Saquon and Mixon as your RB1 and 2. You may have a 2 flex league, but Jonathan Taylor sits at one of those. And then with having Tyreek Hill and Ladd, you can fill the second flex position confidently rather than having to fill it with BTJ or Hopkins, which is not going to be able to suffice in a lot of the upcoming matchups. So, Rob, I keep what you have there. Tim P in the chat says, greetings. Flex 1 in a full PPR. We have Jalen Moore, we have Njoku, we have Elijah Moore, we have Juju Smith-Schuster or Mike Williams. Not interested in Mike Williams, not interested in Juju. Really, it's just a matter of whether the weather tomorrow is going to be solid. If it's a solid weather game in which there's not a heavy downpour, I'm playing Njoku. In the event in which it is a heavy downpour, at that point, I'm playing Jalen Warren and just hoping for it to be a run-heavy game. Michael Schmidt in the chat says, would you play Kelsey or Otten at tight end and Johnston or Worthy or Tillman at wide receiver? Again, earlier today, wide receiver rankings, Johnston was the highest ranked of those available names. And then if it's between Kelsey or Otten, I'm 100% playing Kelsey. There's no week in which I have Kelsey on roster and he is not starting. The only time it would take place in which Kelsey doesn't make my starting roster this week is because I'm playing Brock Bowers ahead of him. Okay, let's see here. We continue on. We had a question that came in from Prime 8th Place. It says, kindly rate my team. Kindly, listen, I will try to do so kindly. If it does not look like a good team, then I'll definitely tell you. I'm not shy to tell people that their team sucks or obviously needs improvements. But let's see your team. 10-team half PPR. It says, I gave Christian McCaffrey, McLaurin, and Otten for Nico Collins, Pickens, and Kenneth Walker. Okay, I don't have an issue with that, assuming you have a good tight end, of course. You have Hurts, Connor, Tyron Tracy. You have Chase Brown, you have Chuba Hubbard, you have Kupp, Neighbors, and McBride and Njoku. Yeah, okay, I don't have an issue with this. Now look, overall, you've only just made this trade primarily to improve wide receiver, which having Kupp and Neighbors, I don't know if you needed to make this trade at this capacity, but I understand it. I think it's an even trade across the board in a half PPR, so I really am not bothered by it. I think I'm just curious, Primate, as to what exactly your league consists of in terms of starters. Can you start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, or is there a 3rd wide receiver starting spot or a 2nd flex that gives you the ability to want to make a trade of this caliber? Because otherwise, I'd have been very comfortable just keeping Christian McCaffrey, McLaurin. Yes, you would have had an abundance of overall tight end depth, but I mean, really at this point, Kupp is going to auto start. Neighbors in a lot of scenarios will auto start. Now that you have Nico, at least you'll play Nico instead of Neighbors. But you're still going to have to fill in a flex, which, again, once Chase Brown is off of it. Yeah, I'm just curious. How many players can you start every week? All right, let's see here. Thomas Dabney. Where are you, Thomas? Says, am I getting the Texans, Vikings, or Broncos defense this week? If I had to suggest a defense that I prefer out of all 3 of them, as of right now, I probably prefer the Broncos number 1, Vikings 2, Texans 3. That's the way that I'd go about it. Mainly because, again, the Las Vegas Raiders, when we talk about defenses and how well they have played, in terms of fantasy point production against them as of late, it's pretty apparent that it's just going to be a one-sided affair and probably a lot of points scored in the favor of the Broncos. Like, just looking at the most recent performances, 11, 16, 13, 17, 8, 10, 6, like, it just seems like an auto start in that scenario in terms of the Denver Broncos defense. Otherwise, you could pick up Minnesota because not only will you have Minnesota this week, but you could probably play them rest of season. Broncos is a very similar situation where I not only want to play them this week, but I also want to play them the week after against Cleveland because I think that is an advantageous one. So you can get 2 weeks out of them, but then you'll need to hit the bye. So if you're just looking for this week only, yeah, Broncos is my highest ranked of the group as of right now. Thank you. In Your Cheek says, Allen, Achane, Christian McCaffrey, Chase Brown, Aaron Jones, Puka, Nico, Cooper, DJ Moore, Leggett, Mark Andrews. Okay, now that I have the context, Cheeks, thank you. Let's see what your deal is here, Cheeks. Let me go ahead and let's go here. Let's look up this. Okay, so your primary question is 2 Flex League questions in the chat. So then we go up to your primary first question, which says you sold your soul. And then your question was, can I afford to lose? I can't afford to lose one more game, but final suggestions. Okay, so if we're making any suggestions here, so you have Josh Allen at quarterback. That is an issue. We need to make it. Who's your next quarterback this week? Because obviously you said you can't afford to lose. So who's your backup quarterback? You haven't. This is the thing. Like, you've sent in the messages, but there's not enough context. Like, sorry. In the sauna on the phone. What? You're trolling me. I swear. Cheeks, brother, you are trolling. What are you talking about? Dude, okay. Here's the plain and simple fact, okay? You don't have Josh Allen, nor do you don't have Chase Brown this week. So you don't have Amari Cooper this week. So as a whole, I mean, you have 2 major fill-ins. But again, as of right now, you can start Achane, Christian McCaffrey is your RB1 and 2. Aaron Jones can play your flex. Nico is your wide receiver 1. Puka is your wide receiver 2. And Mark Andrews is your tight end. So pretty much just a matter of who's playing quarterback. That's really it, Cheeks. As long as you figure out who's playing quarterback, there's no issue. That's my only primary suggestion. Otherwise, there's no trades needed to be made. You have a pretty solid roster across the board there. All right, let's see here. Terp sends in a question. Says, Andrew, questions in the chat. All right, Terp. Terp says, Andrew, the prodigy. Bye week madness. I dropped Pearsall and picked up Worthy for the flex. Am I comfortable flexing Worthy, or should I pivot him to someone like Mike Williams, Mario Douglas, or Alec Pierce in a non-PPR? In a non-PPR scoring format, I would assume that of those available options you have mentioned, Worthy has the highest upside of a touchdown, so I don't have an issue with it. The only other player that I would theoretically potentially consider playing in his stead would be Alec Pierce, but both of them are very volatile to the extent to where I'm okay just rolling with Worthy there. Daniel Caps in the chat says, I'm 8-3. On a 6-game winning streak, clinched a playoff spot. Wanted to say thank you. All right, no problem. Glad to help, Daniel. Hopefully, again, job's not finished. You're 8-3. Still got to make some, got to make some victories happen in the fantasy playoffs. Otherwise, in a couple weeks, you'll be saying, fuck you, Andrew. Adrian says, do I sit CeeDee Lamb for Mike Evans rest of season? Yeah, I would say that I'm comfortable doing so. I'm starting Cup already. I need one more. Yeah, Evans is solid. All right, moving on. We had a question from Walker, who sends in a question and says, drop 1. Keep in mind, I have Mixon and McBride, and I'm fighting for first round bye. Thielen, Pierce, Henry, Carr. I need a kicker. Okay. So I don't know why you need Derek Carr on roster unless you had an upcoming situation where your quarterback's going on bye. So I'm dropping Carr in a heartbeat, and I'd rather keep the rest of the available options. Again, unless you're in a scenario in which you have like a week 14 bye for your quarterback. Outside of that, Carr gets dropped. In the event in which you need to have Carr on roster because of said week 14 bye, at that position, we would put ourselves at a point to where we are dropping Thielen. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Constantino in the chat says, what's up, bro? PPR, JK or Bucky? I'd rather play Bucky this week. Also, Devontae, Marv, or Downs? I'd rather have Marv. Thank you. Alex Ruiz in the chat says, Superflex, PPR, yard reception bonuses. We have quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and a superflex and a singular flex. I have May, Richardson, Tracy, Brian Robinson, Rico, AJ Brown, Nico, Debo, Sutton, Tillman. Set my lineup. Okay. So going into this week, starting both those quarterbacks. So Drake May is your QB1, Anthony Richardson is within the super flex. When we look towards running back, of the available that you have, Brian Robinson's number 1, Tyrone Tracy's number 2. Then we move on to wide receiver. I am playing A.J. Brown and Nico Collins, and I am flexing Cortland Sutton. That's the way I go about it, Alex Ruiz. Thank you. Okay, let's see here. In Your Cheeks says I have Goff. Okay, then you're chilling. There's really no need to make any moves there, Cheeks. You're pretty strong across the board. Obviously, if you were trying to like guarantee a victory here, you would take those players that are on bye, Chase Brown, etc., Josh Allen, and you'd move them for a trade. But at the moment, yeah, you're stacked across the board, so you don't need to make that kind of a desperation play, in my opinion. Matt Friend in the chat says, traded Lamb and Bucky for Pickens and Tracy. Did I win? I would say no, most likely. I prefer Bucky over Tracy ROS. And I think Lamb and Pickens could be very similar, but I think the separation of value there makes it either an even trade or one that you may be losing in for the upcoming remainder of the season, ever so slightly. But again, we're going to hope for the best there. I mean, look, it's just a matter of once you get to the fantasy playoffs, can Pickens deliver in week 15? That is that's the only question. If you're not going to get a first round bye, you have to send Pickens against Philadelphia. And nobody has played well against Philadelphia as the number 1 wide receiver. So if I'm sitting with Pickens on roster and I know I'm not getting a first round bye, that's the week that I'm having a cow about. That's the one I'm panicking about. Dre Plays says, rest of season half PPR, Henry or Christian McCaffrey? That's a really good question. Damn, that is a really good question. I would assume, but okay. Considering the way that Derrick Henry has played thus far, there is no reason for me to trade him at all. If I had Henry, there's no reason for me to trade him. If you had made a statement in which you said it was a full PPR, I would make the swap. But considering the half, I don't need to make the swap. I'd keep Henry. All right, let's see here. We had a question that came in from Brent Shin, who says, traded Daniels, JJ, and Harrison in a 10-team PPR, 2 wide receiver, 2 running back, 1 flex league. I got Burrow and Jamar. Okay, interesting. So technically you got an upgraded quarterback and you got an upgraded wide receiver, but you have to pay the tax of Marvin Harrison in order to do so. Let me look at the rest of your roster here. So I have Burrow, Nix, Herbert. I have Saquon, Cook, Tracy, David Montgomery, Nico, Jamar, Chase, Pickett. Okay, you're fine. Evans, yeah. Listen, Brent, you are in a position to where you have so much depth and so much value already on roster that you could afford to make a trade of that caliber. So I have no issue with it at all. Again, I'd assume that you would only make that trade because you are in a position to where you are making the fantasy playoffs and you're preparing for it. And, Burrow and, of course, Chase can very easily help you capture a championship this season. So well done. Turner in the chat says, should I trade Marvin Harrison for Higgins? If you can afford to not have Higgins this week and you don't need him because you've got a really good, win-loss record, then yes, I'd make that trade. I'd much rather have Higgins the rest of the way. Alrighty, let's see here. Hayden in the chat says, why is Bucky a big play this week? Giants. End of statement. Let's see here. Okay, we took care of that. I'm playing the worst guy in my league this week. Got this? Okay, got it in your cheeks. Yeah, listen, then don't move. You don't need to make any moves. You're good to go there. Patrick 510 says, full PPR Tracy or Stevenson rest of season. I'd rather have Tracy rest of season. Dan Rung says, PPR, Devontae, JSN, or Tracy in the flex. I'd rather play JSN out of all those available options. Especially considering the heater he's been on as of late. It's too easy to just start him and not worry about it. Football says, hey, Andrew, so I have a stupid league that playoffs are week 14 through 16. Okay, so if I'm in your position, I'm never paying the entry fee for that, and I'm leaving the league right now. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I wouldn't pay the entry fee. That's a joke of a league. I've got Vikings defense. Can I just play them rest of season, or would it really be huge advantage to pick up the Commanders or Cardinals? Let me look at Vikings schedule. Why do you guys play in week 14? Like, how does that even make sense? You're gonna be playing in the playoffs with half your players on bye because there's 6 teams on bye. It's so bad. Looking at the schedule for the Vikings, weeks 14, 15, 16, Atlanta, Chicago, Seattle. I'm starting the Vikings every week there over the other alternative defenses you just mentioned. All right, let's see here. Brian in the chat says start two. Estimate Roshan Johnson, Trey Benson, Abdullah. Considering we did not see Madison and or Zamir White practice today, if we can get the same overall indicator by Friday, then I'm playing Abdullah number 1, and I'm following it up with playing Roshan Johnson. In the event in which Madison and or Zamir White are active, then you would play Benson and Roshan Johnson. Andrew 1183 says, what's up, bro? Flex 1 in a full PPR, Adunze, Bucky Irving, Dre Hopkins. I'm playing Bucky Irving 10 times out of 10 there. It's not even close. Let's see here. We had a question from DeJane Jones, who says, Christian McCaffrey, Brian Robinson, Tracy, Kupp, DK, Pickens, Neighbors, half PPR, start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 1 flex. I'm worried about the Giants' offense and the Steelers' weather. Okay, so obviously you know that you're starting Christian McCaffrey and Brian Robinson at running back. I think you know that clear and away. Wide receiver, you know you're playing Kupp, and you're probably playing... Okay, so if tomorrow's weather's... Okay, well, even if tomorrow's weather, that doesn't really bother me. I'm playing Kupp and Neighbors at wide receiver. I'm not too worried about it. I think he'll still get enough opportunity. But the matchup itself, Tampa Bay, I think is the most important thing to take into account. That secondary does not have enough talent to bottle up Neighbors. So as of right now, Christian McCaffrey, Brian Robinson, Kupp, Neighbors. Now, the determining factor within your flex is purely a matter of what the weather looks like tomorrow. If the weather's a disaster, at that point, I'm pivoting to playing DK Metcalf over Pickens. Thank you. Let's see here. Remonster says, in a half PPR, I need an emergency bye week flex, Benson or Brooks. I don't even know if Brooks is going to play this week. I'm going to be totally honest. So in the event in which Brooks is... Well, even if Brooks is active... Out of all those options, Remonster, I'd rather play Roshan Johnson over Benson and Brooks. Roshan Johnson is the best player of the bunch because we know that he's going to at least get touches. And in the event in which they get into a goal line situation, you know he's getting the ball and you know he's getting into the end zone. Tony Lopez says, full PPR, assuming the weather tomorrow is fine, start Quentin Johnston or Jerry Jeudy. Under the assumption that the weather is fine tomorrow, I think I'm still playing Quentin Johnston there. I'd still prefer that. Opponent is starting Jameis and Tillman. I'm already starting Njoku. Do I start Jeudy for strategy? Yeah, no, I'd still play Quentin Johnston there. Okay, let's see here. Simon K says, Darnold or Wilson this week? I'd rather play Darnold. Levon in the chat says, Myers, Pollard, Addison, and or Chubb for the flex. Out of those available options, I'm probably playing Pollard, especially considering Tyjae Spears is in concussion protocol. So Pollard is the best of the bunch there. Louis says, full PPR, Reed, Debo, Tillman, D-Hop, and Myers start 2. I mean, you got a video right here that could answer that question like this. So again, if you want more context, you can head over here. Otherwise, if you don't want to do that, Reed and Debo are the 2 highest ranked. Josh Holt says, full PPR, flex Warren, Watson, or Laporta. I don't even know. No, I'm not playing Watson. I couldn't do that. I couldn't put myself in that situation. So it's either Laporta or Warren. If Laporta gets well, you don't know if he's going to get a full practice by tomorrow. He got a full practice today, which is great. If there's no setback in a full PPR, I'd prefer to play Laporta against Indianapolis. So yeah, let's just lean towards potentially playing Laporta there this week. Levis, Richardson, or Caleb. I'd rather play Richardson out of the group there. Jimbo Fisher sends in a question, says, thanks, Andrew. Tillman, Tracy, or Reed in a full PPR? As of right now, full PPR, I'm playing Tracy there. All right, let's see here. Eugenio says, should I drop Lockett to pick up Marquez Valdez-Scantling or any other options? Currently 10-1 in a half PPR team consisting of the following. Yeah, I don't mind that. I'd pick up MVS. If you're looking towards the future, I have no issue with it at all. Can we comfortably start MVS in a given week? I mean, I'd still say no. But in comparison to Lockett, I feel more comfortable about it for the future, at least. Fabian sends in a question, says, Breece Hall for Mike Evans, thoughts? If you're in need of a player this week specifically because of the absence of Breece Hall on a bye and you're trying to set yourself up to make a victory this week, or at least help yourself capture a victory, then yes, you make that move. Tony Lopez says, also, if the weather sucks tomorrow, do I pivot from Njoku to Laporta? I would say that there's a... Yeah, if the weather's a disaster, then yes, you pivot. Jackie says, Pickens or Irving in a full PPR. I'm worried about the weather. Yeah, again, if it doesn't look good tomorrow, it's a for sure pivot in that scenario. But if it's clear weather, you got to play Pickens there. He's played far too well. The last, 4 games, it's like 75 yards and 5 receptions minimum. So you'll get yourself the baseline of 12.5 points with the upside of probably getting yourself a touchdown to that 20-point range. So if the weather's solid, you play Pickens. Otherwise, yeah, Irving is a fantastic pivoting option that you're lucky to have there, Jackie. Let's see here. What does it say? Hawkinson or Adunze in a PPR? I don't know where I'm going to value Hawkinson yet. Again, tomorrow we'll have our quarterback and tight end rankings posted on the channel around 1 p.m. tomorrow afternoon prior to the Thursday night football game. As of right now, I don't know what I want to do with Hawkinson. I got to still go watch film on it, see what exactly went wrong last week. Swift injury concerning. I mean, that's a TBD. Again, it's only Wednesday. By the time we get to Friday, if we're in a situation where we're limited, I'd expect him to play. If he is a non-participant in Friday's practice, at that point, I'm doing everything to pick up Roshan and potentially play him within the week. It says, Andrew, do you line up your own beard? No. I don't have steady hands. Hugo says, Fabi. Okay, he's talking to somebody else there. Constantino says, show some love. Thank you very much, Constantino. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. We took care of that. Anderson in the chat says, do you think Taysom Hill will keep vulturing Alvin Kamara's touchdowns? Does last week's lower Kamara's value? Do I think he can potentially do so? Yeah, absolutely. You don't have that kind of a game, and then the team is like, yeah, we're going to stop using you. If anything, they're going to double down and maybe give him even more touches every week, especially considering, Jamal Williams and what's the other backup? I forget his name. Kendra Miller. Considering both of them are injured, they're going to continue to utilize Taysom Hill. And of course, this Wildcat scheme that they've utilized for the last 3 seasons has been highly valuable and highly efficient. So don't be surprised if he keeps stealing touchdowns going forward. Kevin G says, oh yeah, so we took care of that. Eugenio says, should I make any trades moving forward? In terms of your roster as a whole, Herbert, Tracy, Kenneth Walker, Mike Evans, Zay Flowers, McBride, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Geno Smith. No, I mean, look, considering what you have on roster, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, fantastic. Mike Evans, great. You could theoretically, after this week, if the bye week, if the trade deadline isn't this week, if it's next week, maybe you can move one of your wide receivers in order to improve your RB1. But otherwise, no, I don't think there's a necessity to have to make a change in this scenario. Because you'd have to give a 2-for-1 trade. You'd have to give away 2 players, which will kill your depth. Mario says, bro, when are you posting your legendary rest of season videos? You know what's funny? Last week, I included every single rest of season schedule and ranking rest of season strength of schedule in every single video of last week. So if you're talking about rest of season rankings, I'm not doing that this year. As for rest of season strength of schedule that has already been posted, it's in with every single video of week 11 at the end of the video. But if you're specifically talking about rest of season rankings, not doing it. Jason sends in a question, says, Jatavion Sanders likely or Schoonmaker? As of right now, I probably lean towards Schoonmaker there, to be honest. That volume of opportunity he received, again, very much so dependent on the fact that Cooper Rush threw the ball 55 times. But if even in a scenario in which he doesn't throw the ball that often, I'd probably go Schoonmaker 1, Jatavion Sanders 2, likely 3. All right. Ebbs and Flow says, Andrew, what's up? PPR, drop Dowdle for Elijah Moore. If you had to start one this week, if the weather's solid tomorrow, I'd say yes. Because you'd have to start him. If you're not starting him and this is just for the bench, then no. Hugo Highway said, it's my first year. Is it crazy to keep 3 defenses in your line and line my matchups for solid? Well, okay, here's the thing. It depends on how many roster spots you have. If the rest of your lineup does not have upcoming bye weeks, I've had it before in my own leagues where I've rostered 3 defenses in a week. But the only time I ever do that is when I'm in the fantasy playoffs or I'm in the fantasy championship. I will roster 3 defenses to ensure that the other team that I'm playing cannot get those defenses. But in your scenario, if you don't have any upcoming bye weeks that are going to cause a disaster, then sure, I don't see the problem with the strategy. But if I was in your position and I had like Kyron Williams on roster, I would be rostering Blake Corum instead of a defense, Someone said, how do you get Hill and Chase? How you get Hill and Chase is by trading for Hill once Tua goes down with an injury. Right? Daniel Lundquist says, can you make playoff only video? For what? What are we talking about? Playoff only for what exactly? Should I drop Aubrey for Sanders, Seibert, or McLaughlin? I'd be very much so interested in picking up Seibert there, but that's just my opinion. The fact that you haven't dropped Aubrey yet makes me believe that you're an Aubrey, you're all in on Aubrey, and I don't blame you. So maybe me telling you Seibert will make a difference, but maybe not. Frosty says, hey, Andrew, in a full PPR, I need a flex out of Worthy, Pop Douglas, Elijah Moore, Westbrook Ikine, Roshan Johnson, and Justice Hill. I think it's pretty simple. If Elijah Moore has solid weather tomorrow, he's the starter. Otherwise, I'm playing Pop Douglas in a full PPR. Jocelyn says, if Swift is out, would it be worth to drop Warren and pick up Johnson, assuming we hear good news before the game tomorrow? If Swift is out, you will not know whether Swift is out until Friday. So, in the event in which you're in a situation where you can still drop Warren on Friday, even though he's played, which you should, every league, as long as you leave him on your bench, you should be able to drop him. I don't mind it. But again, that's only because you'd be picking him up to play him. Max Keller says, full PPR start 1, Schoonmaker, Disley, likely. Didn't I just... Maybe I didn't... No. This was a different question. Max, Disley 1, Schoonmaker 2, likely 3. Ben Pierce sends in a question. Thank you, Ben. Ben says the following. Says, I'm currently 8-3. Traded away Burrow, Terry, Tracy for Christian McCaffrey. Wow. You have Kyler at quarterback. Burrow... I'm confused. You said you trade away... Okay, so this is a question. It's not more of a you did it already. Understood. You have Kyler Burrow. You have Bijan, White, Pollard, Tracy. You have JJ, London, Wilson, Terry. Okay. So, considering the context of this question, if I was in your position, I would be willing to make the trade. Because, look, here's the thing. The only downside for this trade is losing Burrow. But Kyler will suffice. Getting Bijan, Christian McCaffrey as your RB1 and 2. JJ, you still have London for the fantasy playoff. I don't mind this trade at all. As long as you're not in a league, Ben, in which you have 3 starting wide receivers and 2 flex to where you need the depth, as long as you're not in that kind of scenario and it's a start 7 league where it's 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, I have no issue with it. Herman Deep sends out a question. Says, I have CD, Devontae, Ladd, Myers, and Tillman. For running back, I have Chase Brown, Tracy, Rashad White, Najee, and Pacheco. In a 10-team PPR, Tracy plus Ladd for Cup? Sure. Yeah, I don't have an issue with that at all. Sounds good to me. Chernobyl Clocks says, start or sit Odunze, Tillman, and or Tank Dell in a standard league. In a standard league, Tillman is 100% dependent on weather. If in the event in which the weather is terrible, out of those available options, I'm most likely this week playing Dell before I play Odunze. Access MIA says, start Jennings over Debo. Debo has been a bust all season. Yeah, earlier today, I ranked Jennings ahead of Debo in this video. So yeah, we'll take that. James says, Chuba or Najee or Debo in the flex. Out of all those options, I probably end up playing Najee Harris tomorrow. Says, what do you think about Jeudy rest of the season? Very much so dependent on Jameis Winston. Every single receiving option within the offense of the Cleveland Browns, I was going to say Kansas City Chiefs, of the Cleveland Browns is 100% dependent on the variability and the overall kind of crazy, unpredictable nature of Jameis Winston. There are 4 solid wide receivers in the offense. Every week, 1 or 2 of them are going to be busts, but the other 2 are going to pop off. So, Judy's solid in the event that he is the guy more often popping off than not. Let's see here. We had a question from Frank Grillo. Frank says, Kyler or Mahomes? This week, I'd rather play Kyler. Next question. Also, Myers, Dowdle, Cedric Tillman, or Hunt. Who would you put in the flex? I'd only play Hunt if Pacheco is designated out by Friday. So you're going to have to wait until Friday. You're not going to play Cedric Tillman tomorrow. And you're going to wait until you figure out whether or not Hunt is going to play. If tomorrow Pacheco has a full participating practice, then at that point, I'm just going to play Tillman, assuming the weather's fine. If the weather's not fine, you wait till Friday, play Jacoby Myers and or Hunt. Thank you. Daniel Lundquist says, who should I drop to pick up Bills defense for week 17? My roster is Baker, Nix, running. Okay, hold on. Wait. Okay, wait. Your question is about week 17. Okay, so here's the thing. In regards to a week 17 situation, okay, the issue is I don't know what kind of disaster of injuries that could, potentially take place between now and then. So I can give you advice, but if I tell you the wrong thing, don't be surprised. Like if I tell you to drop one of your 2 quarterbacks, like if I tell you to drop Nix because you're playing Baker every week henceforth, expect that just to be like that's because I don't know what's going to happen next week, this week, the week after, the week after that, the week after that. But there's a lot of time between now and then. So making me predict that kind of a 7 weeks from now scenario in week 17, if I have to drop somebody, I mean, the axe goes to Jacoby Myers. He's gone off the roster. But don't be surprised if he starts popping off lately and then you're like, Andrew, why did I drop him? Well, it's because you're preparing for week 17, which you don't have any business doing this early. Jonathan sends in a question. Says, in a 10-team starting, Hurts, Jacobs, Tracy, Jennings, Smitty, Kelsey, need a flex between Ridley, Dobbins, and Tillman. Out of those 3 available options in a full PPR scoring format, I'm probably playing Ridley there. Yeah, I'd probably play Ridley. Travis sends in a question. Says, Pickens, Bucky, Rome. Pickens' weather kind of concerns me. Start 1. Yeah, if the weather's a disaster tomorrow, you have to play Bucky Irving. Thank you. Lou sends in a question. Thank you, Lou. Lou says, PPR, Murray or Knicks? As of this week, to be determined tomorrow. Off the top of my head, I could not tell you. I would say that considering the Seattle Seahawks defense and how terribly they've played as of late, I would think about playing that. But as of right now, can't 100% say so. If I had to tell... Yeah, let's wait till tomorrow. Again, tomorrow's video will have that. If I had to tell you right now, again, I don't think I'd be confident within the answer that I give you because it could very easily change. Haven't done my research regarding quarterbacks. After this live stream that ends in about, 10 minutes from now, I'm going to literally, compile all the data that I require in order to make sure that I have the right decision for that regard. Chernobyl says the weather doesn't look good for tomorrow. Yeah, that's going to be tough, man. We'll have to wait and see. Norbeth in the chat says, standard league, do I drop one wide receiver? Okay, drop one wide receiver. We have Smith, Jennings, Debo, McConkey, Tillman to pick up Trey Benson. The only reason I'd pick up Trey Benson is if you have Connor on roster and you don't have any other additional running back depth. Now, in the case if that is the scenario, your drop is Tillman, which sucks, but that's the scenario you've put me in, Norbeth. All right, let's see here. Scrolling down here, what is a question that we haven't answered yet? Omar says, how should I feel about Aaron Jones moving forward? Low-end RB2. If he scores a touchdown, we're lucky. If he doesn't, it's kind of what it's kind of what the offense has turned into. It's a shell of itself in comparison to what we've seen earlier this season. I mean, again, I'm not feeling great about it. I'll just tell you that much. Miguel says, rank these for wide receivers for rest of season. PPR, CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, Garrett Wilson, Puka. Puka number 1. Evans number 2, CeeDee 3, Garrett Wilson 4. Blue Jay says, hey, Andrew, in a full PPR, Schoonmaker or Trey Tucker Kraft? I'd rather have Schoonmaker this week. I'm not going to even joke. I don't want to play Schumacher. It says, if I don't play Schumacher, I'll pick up MVS. Yeah, I'm playing Schumacher. The fact that Tucker Kraft had 1 target last week kind of speaks volumes, I think. Chuba Hubbard or McLaurin in a PPR? I'm playing McLaurin. Flex, Bucky or Sutton in a PPR? That's a really good question. In a full PPR, I'd probably just play Sutton there. John Zavala sends in a question. Says, who's better play this week? Rest of season, pick one. Rome Odunze, Demario Douglas, Adam Thielen, Rico Dowdle. The answer is the same for both. The answer is Rome Odunze. Dan Rick says, drop Devontae for Bucky, DJ Moore, or Rome. Yeah, I'd drop him for Bucky in a heartbeat. Joseph Mai says, hey, Andrew, in a half PPR, who should I start in the flex? Jones, Pollard, Jennings, JSN, or Tracy? Out of all those available options, it's Jennings 1, JSN, actually no, it's probably Jennings 1, Aaron Jones 2, JSN 3, Tracy 4, Pollard 5, under the assumption the weather is not a problem in any of those scenarios. But again, we won't know until Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 305 Raider says Tua versus New England or Anthony Richardson versus Detroit. Thanks. I'd rather have Tua this week. Thank you. Awad says full PPR. Which one for the flex? Akers, Ford, or DeMarcus Robinson? If I had to play one for the flex this week, it's probably Akers. Cameron Andrews says half PPR, RB2 Bucky or Pollard? It's Bucky. Jermaine Robinson says Tracy for Evans, half PPR. Yes, I'd rather have Evans. My rest of my running backs are Gibbs, Henry, and Hunt, and Brooks. I don't love that, mainly because Henry has an upcoming bye week. So actually, considering the situation you're in, Jermaine, unless you're guaranteed to make the playoffs, I don't make that trade at all. Because going forward, once the week 14 bye hits and Henry's going to be missing, if you're in a situation where you need to win that week, doing so in the absence of Tyrone Tracy might kill your season. Let's see here. Astro says Pollard, Chuba, Debo, or Bucky. Pick one. I'm playing Bucky out of all those. Not even close. Easy E says, Andrew, how do we feel about Hawkinson rest of season given the Vikings offense recently? I don't like, look, here's the thing. The upcoming schedule is okay. As long as they are, again, going to be in situations where they don't have to play the Chicago Bears every week, I think they'll be fine. But yeah, it's definitely been a tough slate as of late, to say the very least. Let's see here. Tony Lopez says, so in a full PPR last week before the deadline, the BFIT, what? Week 11, I had an option to sell Lamb for either I chose Adams. Safety that I was wrong. Or will they be similar rest of the season? Time will tell. Again, hopefully once they come off that bye, they'll be somewhat relevant of an offense. Obviously, the Jets are looking like a disaster as of late. Santana says, finally a YouTuber that understands Bucky hype. I don't think it's hype. I think it's just he has played incredibly well. It's kind of, how could you deny what he has done as of late? In a full PPR, the guy's put up 15 points in 4 of the last 5 games. And you look at his upcoming schedule of the New York Giants, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Carolina Panthers, like, what do you expect him to do besides ball out? Like earlier today at the podium, the head coach was saying Bucky's earned more touches. Like imagine, I thought he was already getting enough touches. He's getting more? Fantastic, even better. And especially considering they're going to be in positive game scripts, blowing out the upcoming teams, they're going to run the shit out of the ball with Bucky. Fantasy Forecast says, I got offered Bucky, Brian Robinson. I got offered one, Bucky, Brian Robinson for Hopkins. I don't understand the question. The 1 and the 2 throw me off completely. So I don't understand. I got offered 1, Bucky, 2, Brian Robinson for Hopkins. So am I choosing 1 or 2 for rest of season? If I'm choosing 1 or 2 rest of season, I'd rather have Bucky. Thank you. Dirk Doug says Cedric Tillman or Jameson Williams. I'd rather play Jameson Williams. Don't have time to wait to see if Laporta. Yeah, that's fine. I'm playing Jameson then outright. Hoping for the big play. McCoy says, got bylocked and need a wide receiver badly, so I traded Henry and Otten for Bijan, Amari, and Kraft. Did I cook? What? McCoy, what? You said I got bylocked. Okay, so you, as in like you got locked up for the bye week. So you traded away 2 players for 3. I'm so confused. No joke, I would much rather have Henry and Otten rest of the season. So I'm confused beyond belief. Let's see here. Roy Powell sent in a question. Roy, thank you very much. Hold up. Before I even get to your question, Roy, Dirk had a follow-up. He says, don't have time to wait. Okay. And Gino and Drake May have already asked, but I'm wondering. Yeah, I'd rather have Drake May this week. Thank you. Roy Powell sends in a question. Says, start 1, JT Downs Jennings full PPR. In a full PPR scoring format, I'm playing Jawan Jennings outright. Zach Ertz or Dallas Goedert rest of the season? Schnabel, I'd rather have Dallas Goedert. Daniel Lundquist says, trade my Lamb for their Tyreek. I don't have an issue with that at all. Sylvester says, Jonathan Brooks or Trey Benson. I don't even think that Jonathan Brooks plays this week. The fact that I haven't heard anything abundantly positive about it, I'm leaning towards Trey Benson. Maddie says, full PPR, Austin Seibert or Bates rest of the season. I'd rather have Bates rest of the season because he doesn't have an upcoming bye week. Fantasy Forecast says different trades for Hopkins. Understood. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'd rather have the Bucky side. But if they're not willing to give away Bucky and they're still willing to give Brian Robinson, I'd be more than happy to take the Brian Robinson side as well. The only issue is he has an upcoming bye, which is less appealing in that circumstance if you're going to need his, a starting running back for the remainder of the season. Let's see here. Michael says, who do I start at defense? Miami versus New England, Commanders versus Dallas, or Buccaneers versus the Giants? As of right now, that's a really good question. I'm probably playing the Commanders defense this week out of those 3. I go Commanders 1, probably Buccaneers 2, Miami 3 if I had to order it. Ashish says, rest of season ranking, Disley, Moore, Benson, Ray Davis. I mean, look, that question's so dependent on your roster. If I'm blindly answering it, it's purely a matter of just who I think is going to score the most points of the bunch, to where I would answer it with Elijah Moore 1, Disley 2, Trey Benson 3, and Ray Davis 4. Francisco says only 45 likes. I think we have a pretty good amount of likes. Don't we have 85? Yeah, if we can get to over 100, that'd be great. Again, you guys know how important that is in regards to helping me out. I appreciate it. Mr. 5000 says, hey, Andrew, do you do LB player stats? What is LB? What is LB? What does the initial stand for? So many guys say they sell Dobbins. Should I do it? So many guys saying to sell Dobbins. Should I do it? I mean, what are you selling him for? Every player is tradable, right? That is an objectively truthful statement. It's just a matter of what are you getting in exchange? Because the upcoming schedule is not favorable. Baltimore and Kansas City in 2 of the next 3 weeks is not fun. But in the fantasy playoffs, I don't have an issue starting him against Tampa Bay, Denver, and or the New England Patriots. So it's just purely a matter of what you're looking forward to and what you can get in exchange. Fantasy Forecast says, I have Hurts, Kyron, Kenneth Walker, Chase Brown, AJ, Nico, Evans, Hopkins, Jennings, Marvin Harrison, QJ, Bowers, handcuffs. I was the one offered the trade for Hopkins. I'm already in the playoffs. Would you take Brian Robinson or Bucky? If it's purely just a fantasy playoff measure, I would rather have Bucky Irving. Well, actually, let me look at the schedule. Hold up, wait. Everybody stay calm. Let me go look at the Washington Commanders schedule throughout that 3-week span, and I'll tell you which are the two that I prefer. So if we're talking about weeks 15 through 17, between the two of those running backs, yeah, I would, at this moment, considering he has Philly week 16, I don't love it. If it's me, I am playing, I would rather have Bucky Irving. That's the way that I'd go about it. Thank you. Andrew in the chat says, why do you seem so irritated today? I think the irritation that you think I have is perhaps you reading the situation perhaps the wrong way. It's not a form of irritation. It's a form of I'm so damn focused in trying to answer these questions so quickly to like get through them quickly that it may come off as irritation. It's not. Trust me. We've been having a really good week this week. Let's see here. Browsing sends in a question. Where does Browsing's question at? Browsing, did you end up typing it? Because it didn't seem like... there it is. Browsing says, I have BTJ, Jaden Reed, and Nakua, Juwan Jennings, JSN, and Higgins are available on the waiver. Okay, interesting. Need to prepare for playoffs in a 5 out of 5. You're currently 5-5. Need to win for the rest of the season. Okay, so you have BTJ, Jaden Reed, and Nakua. Jawan Jennings, JSN, and Higgins are available on the waiver wire. Okay, so if I'm in your position browsing, I am dropping BTJ and Jaden Reed, and I'm picking up Jawan Jennings and JSN and playing them this week. That's the way that I'm going about it, at least. If you can do so, do it. Pick up Jawan Jennings, pick up JSN. Also pick up Higgins if you can. And those are you're set for the rest of the season at that point. Schnabel says, if Pacheco not to play, okay, should I start Hunt over Eckler? Absolutely, yes. But again, we won't know that until Friday. Thank you again, browsing. Jayville sends in a question, says, need to, Odunze, Wandale Robinson, Tillman, Pittman, Watson. Also, what defense? Lions or Eagles? Okay, so as for this week in specific, I'd rather have the Lions defense. Now, to your prior question, if I'm playing two of those available options, as of right now, dependent on the weather, again, if the weather for tomorrow's game is a disaster, we are not playing Tillman. It is not even a negotiable situation. If the weather is sideways and completely disastrous, we are avoiding it at all costs. So at that point, you would want to play Tillman, but in the event in which you cannot, you would pivot to playing Odunze and Pittman. But if you can, you play Tillman and Odunze. Thank you. What does that say? It says, hey, Andrew, replying to your previous post, LB is linebacker. I'm currently have Bobby Wagner. Yeah, I don't play with IDP, IDP being individual defensive player. I haven't played in an IDP league since 2011, or I think it was either 2011 or 2013. So I haven't played in over 10 years in an IDP league, and I don't typically follow that. So no, I unfortunately, to answer your question, I do not have that kind of statistics and or data collection. Thank you. Let's see here. I assumed that you were going to ask about linebackers because LB in football, there's no other thing that would be the correlation, but I just wanted to confirm that that's what you were asking just so that we can get to the right answer. Chubbs McGee sends in the question, says questions in the chat. All right, Chubbs. Chubbs says, I'm in a 12-team Superflex full PPR. We have Burrow, Tua, Cook, Achane, Rashad White, Bucky, Ray Davis, Mostert, Chase, Neighbors, Thielen, Deontay Johnson, Hawkinson, Ferguson. Trade White or Bucky for a wide receiver. Any ideas? Waddle's on the waivers. We don't want Waddle. Waddle would have to put up multiple consecutive weeks of solid performances for us to trust to start him. Otherwise, we'd be blindly just throwing him out there, and we'd just basically be playing a lottery ticket game at that point. So in regards to what you have available, you have Achane, you have Bucky, you have Rashad White, you have James Cook. You have really solid running backs. Am I willing to potentially move one of those running backs for a receiver? Absolutely. If somebody wants to trade for Rashad White, considering the damage he has done as of late, especially in a full PPR, I'm more than willing to ship him off. But you would be specifically looking for a player that you can get at a discount. So if I'm in your position, Chubbs, I'm going to try to take advantage of teams that are currently dealing with a buypocalypse. Which I mean by that is I'm going to the Drake London manager this week or T. Higgins manager and saying, hey, I see that you don't have a running back this week, or I see that you don't have a flex because you're in a buypocalypse. Here's Rashad White. Give me one of those two players, and that's what I'm going after. Okay, we took care of that. Jayville, we took care of. Thanks, Chubbs. Appreciate it. Nick Q, 3435 says, I saw the rankings. Can you talk me through Connor over Gibbs? Can I talk you through Connor over Gibbs? Look, you saw the rankings, but did you listen to the video? Because the video itself talks you through it. I just don't, yeah. I don't understand why I would need to go through it again, right? There's a reason why I put out the video, guys. It's for the purpose of giving you the reasons as to why I feel confident there. Like, Connor's averaging what? I said it in the video yesterday. 18.4 touches per game. 13 plus fantasy points and a half PPR in 8 of the last 9 games. 6 of the last 8 games with over 100 total yards. Takes on Seattle, which is a top 10 matchup. What more could we ask for? In an advantageous matchup against a team that can't stop the run, Gibbs has, of course, the unfortunate nature of dealing with David Montgomery, who can always vulture him. Connor's just a safer play. Metro Boomin sends in a question, says, should I trade JSN, Aaron Jones, D-Hop for Kenneth Walker? Nope, not interested there. I'd rather have the JSN, Aaron Jones combo. DeAndre Hopkins probably not going to start in comparison to the alternative options that we have, Metro, but as of right now, JSN's played incredibly well, and I think the potential of Aaron Jones, I mean, look, if you're trying to make a huge upgrade at running back, you can do so without having to give away that much in exchange for it, I believe. If no one's going to take less than that, then I would just keep what you have, because I think you're giving away too much, quite frankly. Lucas in the chat says, should I trade Kittle and Chase Brown for Achane and Taysom Hill rest of the season? No, I'd keep Kittle and Chase Brown. In a PPR, Chase Brown is just so damn valuable in that kind of a circumstance, and Kittle in comparison to, in my opinion, Taysom Hill is just a safer alternative. Dane in the chat says, do you think DeAndre Swift will have a better fantasy value even if they're going against the Brian Flores Vikings defense? Look, the Vikings defense is not immune to having a successful rusher against them. The only question is going to be, is DeAndre Swift going to catch the ball out of the backfield? And additionally, is he going to break off a big run? If the answer to both of those is yes, then you auto start him. If the answer to both those is no, then expect him not to play well. It's just really a matter of, can he have the ability to break off a huge run? Because that's the only way, really, as of late, that he can get a guaranteed touchdown. Otherwise, it's Roschon Johnson on the goal line, which is very much so a sketchy situation. Fantasy forecast says Bucky or Rashad White, as in we're trading away. I mean, if you're going to try to trade away, I think it's easier to trade away Rashad White. He's more of a familiar name, and of course, he scored, what, 1, 2, 3, he scored 5 touchdowns in the last 4 games. I think that's an easier potential pitch to move. Justice Reborn says, is Mike Williams or Juju Smith-Schuster worth stashing rest of season? I would assume that Mike Williams could be. Juju, I mean, again, look, rostering a Chiefs wide receiver has gotten the same results every single week over the course of the season, pretty much outside of Rashee Rice, right? Every other Chiefs wide receiver has a big game and then disappears for a couple weeks. Then they'll have a big game again and then they'll disappear for a couple weeks. The fact of the matter is there is no concrete, hey, we have to get this guy the ball and he has to touch the ball 10 times a game. There is no Brock Bowers effort. There's not a singular player in that offense that has to get the ball outside of Kelsey at the moment. So, and even then, Kelsey disappears last week and his backup scores 2 touchdowns, right? So there's not really a desire for the team to get somebody heavily involved. And in that, I'm not interested in Juju. Mike Williams, I think, could be of value, but way later down the line once he has a full kind of rapport with the quarterback, but not only that, understands the offense and the full playbook so he can play more than 50% of the snaps. He's coming off of a week in which he had literally 0 receptions, and it's not by accident. When you get traded to a new team, again, it's purely just a matter of, it is difficult to learn the playbook in a short volume of time. He literally played 32% of the snaps. A lot less than I thought he would, to be totally honest, but not a surprise. What does it say? Shrey says, do you think it's a good strategy to keep Purdy as a backup for the playoffs or stash a defense? It depends on who your quarterback is, Shrey. I mean, if your starting quarterback is someone that you believe, let's see, I have Jalen Hurts as my quarterback. Okay, so let's see here. Eagles schedule. So for the fantasy playoffs, would I ever play Purdy over him in those following games? I'm for sure going to play him against Washington and Dallas. Pittsburgh, let's see here. Purdy schedule. What is his deal here? 49ers. Let's click on the team. Let's click on their schedule. As of right now, I don't think it's necessary. I think you can have it on roster just in case. Let's say, for example, okay, worst case scenario happens. Knock on wood, it doesn't, okay? Worst case scenario happens, Jalen gets injured. That's when you would want to have Brock Purdy. So I think it's a smart idea to have for now instead of just holding and preparing for a defense in that scenario. Because I think if anything horrible was to happen, you'd want to be prepared with a solid quarterback rather than have to hit the waiver and then be like, all right, well, I got to start Drake May in the fantasy playoffs, that'll be tough. Let's see here. Terry says, should I drop Tillman for Jennings? Yeah, I would. Absolutely. Jennings has been incredible. Headless Norseman says, full PPR, Dowdle or Alec Pierce? That is a great question. I think I'm playing Alec Pierce there, to be totally honest. Chan says, Jacobs, Swift, Tracy, Ramondre need 2 running backs and a flex. I have Amon-Ra, I have Waddle, and I have Wando Robinson. If you need 2 running backs and a flex, out of those available options, Josh Jacobs is a for sure running back play alongside of, as of right now, I'm probably going to go Ramondre as the number 2 there. And then as for your flex position, I mean, it's Amon-Ra, right? I don't know how you're not starting him already, Chan, but hey, we'll take it. Fantasy Forecast says, would you rather have Bucky or White rest on your team? I'd rather have Bucky. That's why I'm suggesting that you move White. Roga says, are we picking up Seibert again? I got Mooney. Yeah, you could pick him up, but again, understand that in 2 weeks, you're going to have to drop him again for the potential of his bye week. So as long as you're comfortable with that kind of, flip and flopping, then yes. As long as he's healthy and playing this week, I'd like to have him on roster, especially considering they play against Dallas. Is Blake Corum a stash? I think anybody who's a handcuff to your primary back is a stash. So if you have Kyron, you should have Corum on roster. If you have Connor, you should have, Trey Benson. If you have Aaron Jones, you should have the potential of Cam Akers on your team. There's no reason not to have your handcuff at this point. I know that there hasn't been a significant, terrible disaster injury to a stud RB. We've seen it every other season. We've yet to see it this year, and we're lucky for that circumstance. But always, outside of Christian McCaffrey, no one has really missed a significant volume of time. I guess Mixon missed a little bit of time there in the beginning of the season. Having Cam Akers in his absence was very valuable for many of us. But for right now, I'm always looking to potentially have my blue chip running backs stashed handcuff available just in case. Rogo says, are we picking up? Okay, we already took care of that one. Thank you, Rogo. Tommy says, how strong do we feel about Disley this week? I mean, again, he plays against the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens matchup is probably as good as it gets. I know that last week, obviously, there wasn't much production out of the Pittsburgh Steelers tight ends, primarily because, again, Pat Freiermuth isn't highly utilized. But if you look at the entire, all of the tight ends for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Freiermuth and Darnell Washington combined for 4 catches and 66 receiving yards. Not a bad week. The week prior to that, Cincinnati tight ends combined for 11 receptions, 72 and a touchdown against Baltimore. The game prior to that, Cleveland, David Njoku and Jeff Swaim combined for 6 catches, 68 and a touchdown. K. Dotton, 8 for 100. Zach Ertz, 4 for 68. We've seen stud tight ends and or even mediocre tight ends still play well against this defense on a consistent basis, as long as he's given opportunity, which he certainly will, considering his integration within the offense. Disley should be a solid play because of the inefficiency and the incapabilities of, quite frankly, the Baltimore defense to cover. Let's see here. Hey, Andrew, do you mind helping me out? Buddy, I don't like the name. I don't like the word buddy. All right, listen here, buddy. Anyway, Reese, yeah, no problem. We'll just say Tillman or Reed, half PPR. I think I'm just going to play Reed. Even if the weather's solid tomorrow, I think I'm still playing Reed there. Let's see here. Ron Morris says, is Jalen Wright Achane's handcuff? Technically, yeah. If Mostert's going to miss time, technically. We saw it earlier this season when Achane went down with that concussion in the game against, funny enough, New England back in week 5. Jalen Wright stepped up and played well. Mauricio says, full PPR Mixon or Hall, thinking in playoffs. I'd rather have Mixon. I know what the offense is capable of. That offense and that team as a unit are still making it making a push for the playoffs. Mixon's just been too good. That's just the fact of the matter. He has been too good to pass up on. Roshan or Amir Abdullah, Grayson, I think it depends on what we see by Friday. Again, if Alexander Madison and Zamir White are both absent by Friday, in their practice participation, then you play Amir Abdullah. If one of those two are limited and they're saying there's a good chance that they're going to play, then we have to pivot to playing Roshan because Amir Abdullah, very, very, very limited utilization in that kind of circumstance. Let's see here. Eugenio says, flex suggestion, Dowdle, Warren, or Otten. Out of those three, I'm playing Otten. Okay, we took care of that. Heat South Beach sends in a super. Heat, where is your question, though? Heat South Beach says half PPR, Evans, Jennings, Ridley, Ladd, Hopkins, sit one. Okay, if I'm sitting one of those available options, DeAndre Hopkins takes the seat. Evans, Jennings, Ridley, and Ladd are significantly better plays. Then we move on to the next question, Bo Nix or Justin Herbert, which is a very difficult question. As of right now, I'm going to lean towards playing Bo Nix in that scenario. And then it says play Njoku and Boswell in bad weather. Again, it's very much so dependent on what the situation is. If the weather is just a downpour and it's not sideways 25 mile per hour disaster, then we're okay. We can start them both. But in the event in which it is a disaster tomorrow, then yes, you probably should be looking for alternatives just in case, because it may become a game in which Jameis Winston doesn't throw the ball 46 times. Instead, he only throws it 25 times. And obviously, there's a lesser opportunity share for Njoku in those circumstances, making him a little bit more touchdown dependent than we would normally like. So yeah, make sure you keep an eye on the weather for tomorrow. Chubbs sends in a question, follow-up, says, I have two current offers. White for JSN or White plus Hawkinson for Terry McLaurin and Mark Andrews. To be totally honest, I'm not really impressed with any of those in terms of a haul of like production. Like, here's the thing, like what Rachaad White has done as of late and what his schedule is going forward, I think deserves more in return than what you're being offered, Chubbs. So if it's me, you could theoretically take the JSN trade, or you could just say, I'm just not getting enough for the, for what they're getting in return. I'm getting screwed here. I'm losing these trades. So do I want to make that? Like, even the Mark Andrews one, I don't love it. So quite frankly, if it's me, let me see here, Chubbs. Let me go back to your first question. So you had Hawkinson, Ferguson. Yeah, look, moving Hawkinson and then getting back Mark Andrews, I don't love it. I'd rather have Hawkinson rest the season, especially in a full PPR. And considering you already have Chase and Neighbors, like bringing in Terry doesn't really move the needle per se. Because in the flex position anyway, you're theoretically going to play Cook, Achane, and one of those two Tampa Bay running backs. So I guess Terry's not a bad overall move. Yeah, look, if it was Rachaad White for Terry straight up, I'd say yes. But considering you have to give up Hawk there, I'm not interested. The JSN move, it doesn't move the needle for me per se. It could for you, and maybe you want to make that trade and take it, but I don't really, I'm not excited about it. So in that event, I'd probably just tell you to avoid it. All right, Tracy or Jones in a PPR, Constantino, I'd rather play Tyrone Tracy this week. Would you start CeeDee Lamb over Terry, McLaurin, or Debo in a full PPR? Do I start him over both? I mean, I'd be willing to play him over Debo. Yeah, that's for sure. I'd play him over Debo. Okay, guys. Well, I think that's going to cover it. We've been here for an hour and a half almost. Yeah, typically, again, like we do every single night, I typically like to live stream for like an hour and a half. I appreciate y'all coming through, supporting the channel, clicking the like button. For those of you who sent supers, thank you. I appreciate that. For those of you who were just here, potentially didn't even type in the chat and were just, watching. I appreciate your guys' participation and, of course, the continued support. Again, I'll be back tomorrow with quarterback and tight end rankings. I'm going to work on those right now. And, of course, back tomorrow night with a live stream after the Thursday night football game between, of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers and Cleveland Browns. Keep an eye on that weather. Again, in order to probably get a best kind of sense as to how it's going to transpire, Twitter's probably going to be our best friend in order to kind of figure out exactly what it looks like weather-wise. But, again, keep an eye on that. Let that be your guiding light. If not, again, I will have rankings posted on my Patreon for those of you guys who are members there. Again, if you want to potentially join, there's a link down in the description. Outside of that, thank you, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and cue the music. Have a great rest of your Wednesday night. Much love to all of you. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace. this is the post-credit Marvel sequence. Who has a question that I didn't answer? $5 says, listen, you know that I was about to come back, brother. What are you talking about, Rogo? You know how this works. We always have the post-credit scene sometimes. Every now and then, I will not do a post-credit scene if I have to go do something. But in this current event, I am here. If you have a question, type it in the chat, and I will more than happily answer for you. Will I be joining the screen? No, the camera's off. It is unplugged. The lights are off. The green screen is gone. I am here, and I am answering questions. Andrew, please rate my team. What is your team, Tony? Let's see here. Let me see if I can scroll back up, Tony. Where is your team? Let's look up your name, Tony. All I see is Andrew, rate my team. And Tony, I don't see your team, brother. Let's see your face, brother. What do you mean? I've been on stream for an hour and a half. You saw my face for an hour and a half. Just rewind, brother. Just rewind. Come on, Matt. Let's see here. Please rate my team. Tony, what is... Okay, you're trolling me. You're trolling me. That's it. That's all I got. Any questions? Any questions at all? Going once in the chat. Going twice. Going 3 times. It seems as if nobody has questions, which makes sense because we're at the end of the stream. Okay, Matt. All right, good one, brother. All right. I'm waiting to see if Tony types out his team. If he doesn't type it in by 8:26, it's done. Tony says, Superflex, full PPR. Quarterbacks are Love and Richardson. Okay, those are 2 solid quarterbacks for rest season. What's up, G.I. Joe? Says, Mr. Andrew, I'm 10-1 with your holy guidance. Thank you, sir. No problem, G.I. Joe. Listen, you may give me the credit, but I think the credit should also be due to you. I mean, again, you probably drafted a really good team and probably avoided many of injuries. If neither of those statements are true, then I will take all the credit. I'm just kidding. Jay, what's up? Jay says, who should I start? Eckler or Bucky Irving? It's without a doubt the man that you can see on screen right now. It is Bucky Irving. Number 7 of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the crimsicle jersey. He is the play this week for sure. Dev says, need a waiver tight end for a PPR. Okay. Who do you got, brother? Is Disley available? If he is, I think that's a pick up and play. If Disley's not available, Schoonmaker is a great option. Assuming, again, Jonnu Smith is not available as well. Disley or Otten in a half PPR. This week, I'd rather play Otten. For Asti says, I'll take some of the credit. Okay, dude. Tony Lopez says, full PPR Superflex. We have Love, Anthony Richardson, JSN, Adams, Mixon, K9, and Njoku. Adams is the only scary piece of that offense. Everything else is perfectly fine considering the Superflex format, Tony. Everything is perfectly fine. Adams is your X factor, and I mean, at least he gets targets. Garrett Wilson doesn't even get targets anymore within the offense. So I think at least of the 2 receiving options for the offense, there's at least some sort of positive in regards to Adams. What does it say? Wait, so start Bucky over what? What does that say? My YouTube just crashed, of course. Over Tracy? Yeah, absolutely, Matt. What are you talking about? Do you guys not watch the rankings anymore? Do you guys just come to the live streams? Is that what has come to my channel? Is that what it is? I'm just a streamer now? All right. Ramos is going to be the final question here. Ramos says, Josh Allen, James Cook, Kyron Williams, Tyrone Tracy, Jalen Warren, Jonathan Brooks, Braylon Allen, Ray Davis, Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, Khalil Shakir, Jalen Warren, Cedric Tillman, Jake Ferguson. Any moves? At the moment, I mean, really, you don't need to have 10 handcuffs, but you do. As of right now, is there any moves that you would theoretically... I mean, look, Kyron, James Cook, Tyrone Tracy, those are your starters for the rest of the season. Everything else is a handcuff, so you really don't have any, you don't have any depth at running back. You just have your starters and your flex, and you're solid. And I think they're all great for the rest of the season. I'm not worried about that. Jefferson, Puka Nacua, Khalil Shakir, very solid. You'll have honestly, the fact that your tight end is Jake Ferguson, he's going to be a concussion protocol, Ramos, so you probably need to pick up somebody. Onage says McBride or Otten. I'd rather play McBride this week for sure. Rain Day says, hey, them bots hitting. I don't even know what you're talking about. What does that even mean? All right, guys. Thank you. Yeah, Ramos, probably look to get a tight end if you can off waivers. If not available on waivers, I'm most likely looking to potentially make a trade using Jalen Waddle to accomplish that, to try to get a tight end in return. Otherwise, I'm sure Schoonmaker should be available, worst case scenario. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your night. Good night. Peace.